Hey, what's going on, everybody? In this video, we're going to be doing my May wrap-up, and this was my best month yet. I think I read, let's see, I believe 16 books this month. A couple were kind of short, but a lot of them, well, there's some pretty good-sized ones as well. Half of them, 8, were for the one readathon to rule them all, and I wanted to do one book for each challenge, and I got that done. And then after that, I read a bunch of nonfiction books just because I was a little bit fantasied out for a while. But yeah, like I said, 16 books is definitely probably the best month ever that I've ever read, or for a number of books read in a month ever. Just said ever like 10 times, but anyways, alright, so let's just get started. And also with the fantasy books, we'll probably go through those pretty quickly because I already had the one readathon to rule them all wrap up. I'll leave that link down below as well. So we'll go through those pretty quickly, and then we'll go to the rest of the books. So let's get started. Alright, so let's start with the Riddlemaster of Hed. This was an interesting little book. Deals with Morgon, who is a land ruler of a little country called Hed. And they're primarily known basically as agricultural farmers, where even the prince, Morgan, and the royal family like plows the fields and works the land alongside his subjects. But basically, people are trying to kill him, and he has tattoos of stars on his head, and he's like a riddle master, and he's gonna have his big riddle now is basically trying to figure out why people want him dead, and he's got to use his wits as he doesn't really enjoy killing people. That's just not something people from Hed do. So he's got to try and figure out, why everyone's trying to kill him. And it was just definitely an interesting, refreshing read. It's the first book in a trilogy. Oh, and that was by Patricia McKillop. I read The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson, and let's just say this was like the biggest disappointment I think I've read yet this year. I don't know if it was just overhyped or I had like really, really high expectations because of pretty much how everyone else rates this book so highly. I just thought it was just kind of, I don't know, I don't want to say silly, but it was just sort of, I don't know. I didn't like I thought the characters were basically just cardboard cutouts except for Dalinar. And it's just like a bunch of twinks like fighting each other. I don't know. I just didn't like it. I'm gonna have like a much bigger review coming soon, hopefully. But yeah, definitely I don't know. I just didn't care for it too much. I'll read the next one just because everyone says the next one's even better. But I don't know if that means it's just better in like the ways I don't like, because obviously if they thought the first one was really good and the second one's just like way better, it might just be more of the stuff I didn't really care for. But, well, we'll see. Next up, we have The Grace of Kings by Ken Liu, and this was actually a complete surprise. I gave it 4.5 stars. I really, really enjoyed it. But if you like Romance of the Three Kingdoms and Homer mixed together, that's basically what you get with The Grace of Kings. Ken Liu is a really good writer. I like the style he did with The Grace of Kings, and the story is fantastic, and most of the most of the characters are really enjoyable. But yeah, I just really enjoyed this book quite a bit. With 8 fantasy books that I had to read, I definitely had to go with a guilty pleasure at one point, so I went with Conan the Rebel by Poul Anderson, and I wanted to read one of the later Conan novels after Robert E. Howard stuff. And I've heard Poul Anderson's a pretty good writer, so I went with this one out of the 3 I have on hand. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I mean, it's very, you sort of know what's going on just because it's a Conan book, but it's definitely an enjoyable little read. Another fantasy book is R.S. Belcher's The Six Gun Tarot, and I'm thinking maybe westerns might be, like Western fantasies might be kind of a thing too, because I'm reading another one as well right now, Dawn and Damnation. But yeah, The Six Gun Tarot was kind of insane, like all the stuff that was going on. I have a review on the website already. Got to do a video review coming up soon. But yeah, like just tons of stuff going on. We have like tentacle porn monsters. We got the end of the world and like angels fighting and like resurrected peoples and magical stuff and like guns and everything's just like, it's just insane. And this is all taking place, in like the Wild West. So definitely interesting. Also read Andrzej Sapkowski's The Last Wish, which is like the first chronological book in the Witcher series. I wouldn't say this one was like a big disappointment, but it was just sort of middle of the road for me. I haven't played the game, so I don't know if that would like change my mind a little bit or not. You know, these books I think came out before the games did, but I don't know. There's just a lot of talking going on. I'll leave the my video review down below. I also listened to Anansi Boys by Neil Gaiman. This one, like I said, in the video review, this one I just felt was a little bit more, well, I say a little bit more, a lot more style than substance. To be honest, it's written really, really well, and Neil Gaiman is a great storyteller. But the actual like story, you just have to kind of just like go along with it, really, to be honest. And lastly, for the fantasy books, I read The Shadow Throne, the second book in the Shadow Campaign series by Django Wexler. I like this book. He writes pretty good Flintlock fantasy. However, I just felt the pacing in this book was not as good as the first one in the series, which was The Thousand Names. So I rated this one a little bit lower than the first book in the series, but I still definitely enjoyed the book, and I'm going to read all 5 books in the series. Alright, so that's it for fantasy books. Let's go on to the nonfiction. Since I'm going to be doing a lot of research on the Hittites, if you guys have been following the channel along, I like to try and read at least one very short introduction every month, and this one I went with Amanda Podany's The Ancient Near East. And this one was a really good, very short introduction. Some of them can be kind of a little bit too brief, I guess, or too kind of helter-skelter. But this one was really good. I really like the decision to only include civilizations that use cuneiform writing, which basically is just a way of eliminating Egypt and Persia out of the mix. However, those two empires basically get a lot of special treatment, and they kind of take over the show a lot of the time anyways. So this one was really cool in that it dealt with literally just sort of Mesopotamia, Anatolia, and like the Syrian kingdoms and civilizations and empires. So that was really cool. Really enjoyed it. I think I'm going to give it 4.5 out of 5 stars. For a medieval-ish book, I read Ivory Vikings, The Mystery of the Most Famous Chessmen in the World and the Woman Who Made Them, by Nancy Brown. It's a little misleading because Margaret, the woman who may have made them, is like barely mentioned in the book. There's really no answers in the book because all of it is basically just providing evidence, and evidence usually allows for a lot of different interpretations and possible answers to the questions of like when they were made, who commissioned them, who made them, what country were they made, and stuff like that. And lots of different factions sort of compete for the, to actually claim that, they were the country where they were made and all that stuff. But it was definitely a really interesting book, and it does deal with a lot of medieval history of Northern Europe and like the Scandinavian countries after the Viking Age, which is actually a period that most people don't learn too much about. Say like the 11th through 13th centuries in Scandinavia and Iceland and Scotland, things like that. Most people don't learn too much about that because once the Viking Age is over, they kind of just get forgotten, to be honest. But yeah, this was a really interesting book. And also, if you guys don't know, those are the chess pieces that the Harry Potter Wizard's Chest are based after. I read 2 bird science books this month, and the first one was A Thing with Feathers, The Surprising Lives of Birds and What They Reveal About Being Human by Noah Stryker. In this book, what he does is each chapter, he takes like a different kind of like bird intelligence or something similar along that line, and then a specific bird species, and basically just goes really in depth with how that whatever intelligence he's talking about, for example, like memory with nuthatches, like location with pigeons, mating with albatrosses, stuff like that, and just basically just like goes in depth with them and how basically cool they are, and then also tries to relate them to basically human counterparts to whatever aspect of intelligence he's writing about. And I thought it came across really good. He doesn't deal with obviously that many birds per se, because there's maybe like a dozen chapters, so maybe a dozen birds, but he was able to go in so much depth with each little case study that it was a really enjoyable read. The other bird science book that I read was The Genius of Birds by Jennifer Ackerman, and I've seen this one floating around quite a bit, and this one was maybe a little bit more scholarly per se. Not that the other one doesn't use research or is scholarly, but this one had maybe a little bit more science into it, maybe. And it took a little bit different approach where it was a little bit more abstract and not taking just like a specific aspect in each chapter in a specific bird, but more of like a whole, like a different concept of intelligence as a whole, like say, basically singing or artistry, and any like a lot of good case studies from different species can be brought forward like in each chapter. But yeah, it was definitely, both books were pretty similar in that sense, and they're both really good reads. I wouldn't rate one higher than the other, to be honest. This one was a little bit longer, had a little bit more sciencey stuff in it, I guess. But I mean, overall, they both conveyed basically the whole concept that, you know, birds are actually pretty smart, and we probably don't always give them enough credit that they might be due. I see. I also managed to read a World War One book this month, and I picked up Rites of Spring a couple months ago, and I read it now, and it's by Modris Eckstein, and the subtitle is The Great War and the Birth of the Modern Age, and this was a very, I don't know how to say it, it dealt a lot with a lot of like high culture and some like regular culture, how like the cultural currents in Europe changed both during the war, before the war, during the war, and then after the war. A lot of it was sort of, I wouldn't say it was just like over my head, but it was just stuff I really either didn't have any idea about or really didn't care about. Like, for example, the first opening big section of the book deals with how basically theater and plays in Europe changed from like the generation before the war up to, you know, the Rites of Spring, which came out I think the year before World War One broke out. But a lot of it was very, I don't know, it was just very stuff I didn't like, high cultural stuff that I really wasn't interested in, to be honest, that much. However, once he gets going into the different sort of culture currents of like the men on the ground in World War One, I definitely enjoyed that section a whole lot more. For example, like his discussions on the Christmas truce of 1914 was really good. I thought after the war too, he had some of the chapters were good and some were kind of hit or miss. For example, his chapter dealing with sort of the like lost generation and the whole cultural currents of the whole generation that basically agreed with All Quiet on the Western Front was really good. But then like he had a chapter on like Charles Lindbergh and basically why Europe really liked him and stuff like that was just, I don't know, it was just kind of weird, and I guess I don't know, I guess I just didn't get it. But probably if you're more into the basically cultural currents of European society, historically, you'd probably like this book quite a bit. I've really been wanting to read a dinosaur book since I've been seeing the rise and fall of the dinosaurs going around the internet quite a bit lately. So I picked up Dark Matter in the Dinosaurs, the astounding interconnectedness of the universe. And I thought this was going to deal quite a bit with the dinosaurs, and it does to some extent, but really it's more of an afterthought. Pretty much the whole book is just super, super science heavy on physics and astrophysics and cosmology and dark matter. And it's more of like a study of like those fields, and then Lisa Randall and her colleagues put forth a whole theoretical concept and a whole theory on a thing called double disk dark matter, where there's a dark matter plane inside the Milky Way plane, and whenever the Earth passes through it every, say, 30 million years or so, it causes a bunch of things from the Oort cloud to possibly hit the Earth at a much higher rate, and this would coincide with the dinosaur extinction. What was it? KTG? Oh, shoot. Can't remember what the acronym was, but anyways, the whole dinosaur extinction with the Chicxulub impact. But like I said, this book was all really, really heavy on like the physics and cosmology sciences, and it was just, I mean, it was interesting. Just, I'd say it's an interesting read, but not really like a fun read. If that makes any sense. But I have a review on the website for this already, but not a video review. But that'll be coming pretty soon. For my first Hittite book that I read for my research, I read My Folio Society edition of The Hittites by Oliver Gurney, and overall this is just a really, really solid overview of the Hittites. I already have a book or a video review of this. I'll leave that link down below, as with all the other links. And I did enjoy it. Nothing like super, super special, like covering new ground per se, but it definitely just gives a good solid introduction over the Hittites. And lastly, probably my favorite book of the month, I read The Poison King, The Life and Legend of Mithridates, Rome's Deadliest Enemy by Adrienne Mayor. And this is basically a full account, biography of Mithridates VI. If you guys don't know, he was an enemy of the Roman Republic during pretty much the last generation or two of the Roman Republic before its fall. And, for example, he fought Sulla and Lucullus and Pompey, and he basically made his life's like kind of ambition to like always just like fight them, sort of like Hannibal did. Maybe not for the same reasons per se, but yeah, he was definitely an enemy of Rome, and he's known as the Poison King, both because he assassinated quite a bit of people with poisons, most likely, but he also had a whole poison college thing. I don't know. Poison laboratory, I guess you'd say, where he tried to come up with antidotes and new poisons, and then antidotes to the new poisons and things of that nature. And he also ate poison pretty much every day, so he would become immune to basically assassination attempts by poison. But yeah, Mithridates was a really, really interesting figure. This book also, it's like really high quality. It's nice and heavy. It's got a cool like textured dust jacket, and lots of colored plates, all kinds of good stuff in it. Just a really, really good historical biography work by Adrienne Mayor. I don't know why I had never heard of it till now, because it came out like 7-8 years ago, but I'm really glad I read it, and I'm giving it 5 out of 5 stars. But yeah, really good book. You should guys definitely check it out if you're into Roman Republican history, or basically ancient history in general. So there you have it. Those are the 16 books that I read in the month of May 2018. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys have read any of them, or you have any questions or comments on any of the books, leave them down below. I'll be glad to talk to you about them. And always remember, read victoriously.